Folks, we're getting technical in this video, but don't worry, I'm going to do my best to translate exactly how and why today's project was so important. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dev Diary, a series where I try to make my own video games. So if game dev videos are your thing, consider subscribing to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Before we jump into the technicals, let's talk about the actual game. It's a standard top-down horror shooter. Every round, a number of enemies will spawn, and it is up to our player, our heroic pizza delivery person, to deal with them using, what else? Pizza. Once the horde has been taken care of, the level of difficulty slightly increases, with enemies getting more health and doing more damage. To combat these ever-growing dangers, the player is given the ability to upgrade various aspects of their character. We're talking movement, speed, damage, fire rate, etc. All presented in a pizza-themed package. Again, very standard stuff, but that's because this is all simply the base for our main focus, which are the upgrades. Now, Dev Diary is no stranger to the upgrades-based project. We have done many similar projects in the past, but what makes today's project so special is how it was done. And to explain that, we need to get a bit technical. But don't worry if you're not familiar with code, I'm going to do my best to explain this with, what else? Pizza. So in those previous projects, every possible upgrade was stored in some type of list, be it an array or a large list of variables. It was always this tedious effort of having to iterate or otherwise find ways to organize and deal with a large abundance of data. Though since GameMaker's inclusion of structs, this started to change, and I'll just come out and say it, it's a dictionary. I finally learned how to use dictionaries. So now, instead of relying on lists or arrays of variables, the entire upgrade system works on keywords. To explain what this means, let's use a pizza as an example. Up until this project, let's say I wanted to add pineapple to my pizza. I'd have to first request a list of every possible single ingredient and modification for the pizza in general, at least up until we found pineapple, so I could then request pineapple be added to the pizza. It was just not efficient, but it was the only way that I really knew how to do things. But today's project changes that entire process. Now, instead of going through a list or even the request for a list, we can just tell the code to add pineapple to the pizza using the word pineapple. And that's it. And before we break down how this all works, just a reminder that if you enjoy the content, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to help me keep making it. Doing so can get you access to exclusive content and downloads, and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. Now again, this is done through creating a dictionary. This dictionary contains every single possible upgrade and all the necessary data, such as name of the upgrade and the effect or effects they provide. Everything is then chained together using keywords like pineapple. For example, the player has their own dictionary with data for stats and modifications. When they choose an upgrade after a round ends, all that we're passing around is a keyword. That keyword is then used to apply the corresponding upgrade to the player's dictionary. For example, pineapple in our game does two things. Gives the player's projectiles the explosive modification, and also changes the projectile into a bomb. It is deceptively simple yet amazingly powerful. And it is probably worth mentioning here that this is not some new emergent technology. The fact it's taken this long to get here is questionable. However, in my defense, I have never taken a computer science course, and everything that I know about programming was learned through trial, error, and Google. Yeah, well, maybe not Google so much these days, but the last time that I encountered a quote-unquote dictionary in coding was back in the ActionScript days. Yeah, that's Flash for you old heads out there, in which, if memory serves, they were just like glorified arrays anyway. Now, generally speaking, while I have encountered many avenues that could have sent me down this path sooner, the actual push needed only came when I needed to add pineapple to a pizza. So, what does this mean for future projects? A lot. I cannot express just how much this changes how I make stuff moving forward. By switching to a keyword system, this allows my code to be less frigid and more dynamic, like not requiring so many hard-coded checks for things, especially when it comes to things like upgrades. I also suspect that this might be a giant first step into more advanced inventory and crafting systems. And it is just weird how things come to be, as like the thing that inspired today's project was just the curiosity of how binding of Isaac is able to keep track of like so many attributes for its projectiles. Like there's no way they're just using a bunch of on-off switches, right? And while the system built today only featured like maybe 8 variants, there's a hint of synergies, like being able to create explosive lasers or multi-explosive bombs. Clearly there's still a lot left to learn, but words cannot express just how important today's video is and what a huge turning point this likely is in my game dev journey. So with that, let's keep the hype going with my question to you. What was the last thing you learned and how has it impacted your life? Doesn't even have to be game dev related. Also, while you're sharing your thoughts in those comments, if you enjoyed today's video, even if you didn't follow most of it, consider leaving a like. With that said, brings us to the end of today's dev diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.